I'm going to introduce James Lyne, who is the global head of security for Sophos. He's written a lot about the topic, not just about IoT security, but about security in many different fronts. He's been on television shows. I'm sure you've seen his face before. But he's a real thought leader when it comes to security in general and certainly on IoT. So please join me in welcoming James. James, yes,
That is a wonderfully photoshopped picture, isn't it? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are we? Excellent. That is, frankly, one of the more awake responses I've had from an audience this week. I was presenting earlier in the week, and I stood on the stage, I said good morning, and there was a kind of begrudged grumble, like a zombie horde had broken into the room. So I appreciate so many of you suppressing the alcohol last night to listen to me. Now, with that being said, for those of you that haven't run into me before, I do have a standard introductory slide that I like to use to explain my career so far and what I get up to day. I would basically classify myself as a massive geek. I really did used to have hair that unbelievably terrible. I spend the majority of my time unpicking the cybercriminals' latest creations. I get my hands on fun new Internet of Things devices. I am the guy that if you went through his Amazon shopping cart, looks like the definition of completely random. I take that stuff and I spend about half my time in the labs figuring out how cybercriminals could abuse it. I spend the other 50% of my time trying to get out to the community and explain where I think we're going and how cybercriminals will attack us next. Now, this is all strictly presented as a linear progression, although it's more of a cyclic process. If you ask any security researcher, there is a linear relationship between how long and insane your hair is and your ability to accomplish technical tasks. So in my recent research, I've obviously need to revert more to my preliminary stages. Now, I was in a quandary on where to start today with this massive topic of the Internet of Things. And it occurred to me that the best thing to do was to be relatively daring and try and show you some of the problems. So, ladies and gentlemen, over the next approximately 28 minutes, I will accomplish no less than 3 live demonstrations. What could possibly go wrong? Those of you that have ever done a live demonstration will know there's approximately a 1 in 63,004 chance that this is going to go smoothly. So, when it fails horribly, I will warn you now that my standard padding for time routine is to look up a random national anthem on Wikipedia and to sing it. Sometimes in Klingon. So if you suddenly hear what appears to be a horrible version of O Canada translated into Klingon, you know that you should just bear with me whilst I try and figure out what's going on. Another quick health and safety tip. I do have a couple of live attack tools in here, a couple of photographs of crime packs. How can I put this nicely? Please don't leave this room and go and download any of the computer viruses that I show you. It would be a very embarrassing way to round off a presentation about security. Also, if I start using horrifying buzzwords, I say something like, the artificial intelligence vector-driven ontological analysis engine makes a call to kernel32.dll at a particular point in memory using Shinkansen byte encoding at this point at 13:37 on a Tuesday, feel free to throw something, because you won't be the only person thinking, I have no idea what he's saying. So do interject if I go too far off course. So my opening tenet is this. We live in a time of astonishing maturity of cybercriminals. Every single day in our labs, we see in excess of 350,000 new pieces of malicious code, which is basically a lot. Like it's a massive number, right? I remember going into work kind of 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I would sit there and I'd look at this queue of malware, seeing 4,000 pieces of malicious code, and think, how on earth will we ever deal with this stuff? Today, here we sit with 350,000. Over 30,000 new websites get infected, unique new websites get infected every single day. And the grand majority of them are legitimate businesses that have failed to implement simple code security practices. Right? I love, when I go to these conferences, slaying the myth, because you all know when someone gets infected with malware, what is the first question that you ask that person? You're being very coy. It's, which porn site did you go to? Right? It's true, isn't it? Right? It's the standard question. And of course they go, no. Well, maybe there was these 10 or so. Well, let me just make this very clear. The majority of websites where you will be targeted by attackers are legitimate websites. And statistically speaking, if you leave this room and only browse pornography for the rest of your careers, you will be safer. People normally write that down. It's curious. Anyway, but I think that is interesting, isn't it? We have these ideas in security that stick around for a really long time. You go talk to people about what constitutes a good password. They'll say 8 characters. Choose something random, not based on a dictionary. Ideally a flubble of different letters and bizarre characters from Flemish in Belgium, right? Which is the definition of an unbelievably terrible idea. You have just defined a password that is trivial for a computer to guess and impossible for a human to remember. Actually, today, if you don't have a password that's more than 14 characters, you're leaving yourself incredibly vulnerable. Why am I telling you this before we get into the wonderful world of the Internet of Things? It's because it takes a very long time to educate the public, the average user, on a security best practice. And when we succeed, we have to pry that best practice from their cold, dead hands. And that's a massive challenge in an industry that is moving at such a staggering pace of innovation as the one we are discussing here. The best practice is being formed on a down to the hour or down to the day basis where we're used to dealing in traditional computing with a shift on a kind of multi-year basis. This pace represents a massive challenge for us. Now, I talked a little bit about the maturity of cybercriminals, and I really want to get this across to you because I think it's one of the most staggering things that I've seen in my life so far. The maturity of cybercriminals has reached a point where, by many economists' definition, it is a market. We have multiple players competing on price and features. Cybercriminals are creating products to sell to other cybercriminals to facilitate their hacking efforts. And look at these products. This is one of the more modern ones over here. This is one of the older ones. This is still one of my favorites because this is a product you could buy for between $700 and $2,000. And this product makes it 3 clicks easy to generate new malicious code and deploy it to a target. No coding skills required. $700. And look at this business reporting dashboard. I mean, I've seen some IoT products that could learn a thing or two from this cyber criminal, right? This is impressive stuff. And look at this one, the crime pack. I mean, this is, I believe, the definition of bad ass. Did I say that right? It's British, an acronym, yes. Right, I mean, look, it's the drugs and the money and, but this one is the market leader. Now, let me tell you about this one here. These guys are fascinating. When they went out of business, we caught the supposed author. He hasn't been prosecuted yet, although the day after he was arrested, updates dropped. Oh, I didn't mention that. Yes, they do daily product updates to all their customers to make sure that their crime packs aren't detected by security vendors. So, it does come with a subscription contract to make sure the product keeps working. It's obviously very important. This, I'm not joking, I'm actually being serious, yeah, although it is actually also quite entertaining. This one was the first one to move to a cloud business model. You see, ladies and gentlemen, no self-respecting cybercriminal wants to buy a product on-premise, right? In 2015, they want a fully managed solution. These guys, for a fee of a few $100s a month, will host the cybercrime platform. And if that server is taken down by law enforcement, they offer a money-back guarantee. I mean, I have no idea how you would prosecute your, consumer rights against a cybercriminal the other side of the world, but it's an interesting marketing message, if nothing else. Even more ridiculous, some of these have actually gone as far as offering technical support services. You can email a cybercriminal for assistance setting up your illegal hacking server. This is the maturity of adversary that we face, let alone getting into the worlds of nation states and high-end scary things you hear about on the news. This is the common thug of cybercrime, and this is the kind of maturity that we have to deal with. Now, I want to sign off this non-IoT bit with a very simple explanation of modern computing. I remember 10, 11 years ago when I first got into dealing with malicious code, how easy it was to exploit things. I remember if you go back to good old Windows XP, I say go back to, I've actually seen a couple of those running POS systems recently, but for the rest of us, if we go back to Windows XP, it was unbelievably simple to find flaws and exploit them. If you look at a modern operating system, a mainstream PC, there are a staggering number of mitigations that have been built in by these vendors. I used to be the guy that would stand up and lambast Microsoft for their terrible efforts in security. And today, I have to congratulate them for their work over the last few years. Now, you're probably looking at these pictures and thinking this is completely insane, which was kind of what I hoped for. But this is actually a wonderful description of the complexity of exploiting a modern, say, Windows 10 computer. It's roughly equivalent to jumping off your house, hitting a trampoline, springing into the air, throwing a dart, hitting the center of the dartboard, blindfolded, whilst juggling, whilst dressed as a RoboCop riding unicorn. I just put that one in because it's awesome, actually. And if you Google RoboCop riding a unicorn, it's a thing. There's whole sites dedicated to this. I mean, I can't wait for that spin-off, Anyway, ignoring the last one, the point is, it's extremely difficult. The number of software vulnerabilities where bad lines of code are written that can never be translated into an exploit is very impressive compared to a few years ago. So with that, how do we fare in the wonderful world of the Internet of Things? Now, I know what you're thinking. They brought a security guy along. We heard about all this positive stuff yesterday. He's going to ruin all the fun. And you're right. You're right. And by the same measure, I have some suggestions on what we can do about it. So let's jump over to a couple of demonstrations here. I'm going to switch onto my system, and let's just take a look at a few of the flaws. There are so many things that I could have gone through. I have a crate with me packed with bizarre Internet of Things devices. Teddy bears, dollies, thermostats. Customs is always great fun. They kind of open it up and I give them the carnet and they're like, "You have 3 dollies." I'm like, "Yes." "What is it that you do?" "I'm a security researcher." "Carry on, sir." So let's take a look at a few of these flaws. Well, I thought an interesting starting point might be to play a little bit with mobile devices. Not the Internet of Things themselves, but a pretty staggering part of the ecosystem. Now, what we're going to do here is just hand this over to a willing victim, and see, you're the perfect willing victim down there, because I know you're going to be here later. So let's just get you connected. There we go. Okay. Great. If you could open up the web browser for me, and you should get a little error message, should you? That's okay. Let's see what's happening over here. Actually, whilst it's doing that, if you used an Android tablet before, you're an expert.
Yes, I have.
Beautiful. If you just go and open up the Polaris Office app for me. Okay. And there should be a text file in there. I think I called it secret.txt. Pro tip, always name your confidential information secret.txt. Really helps the cyber criminals find it. If you could just put some stuff in there. Let's try. Let's okay. So, all right. Sorry about that. It's kind of awkward, but it's a lovely picture. So an interesting thing here. What we did is we got down to visit a page, and we now have access to his webcam. Let's have a look at a couple of the other things we can do here. Did you put something in there?
Yes, I did.
Could you save it for me? Could you just, if you hit the back button, I think it asks you to save it.
Back button. Okay.
Let's browse over here. So this is fun. We can actually see on this system here a list of all the directories on this nice little Android device. A few fun ones. DSIM, that's where it'll put all the photos. Obviously, none of you would keep photos on your device that you wouldn't want other people to see. That would be silly. The downloads folder, music, things like that, quite good fun. We have this secret.txt just here. That's a nice message. Hello back to you, Dan.
Yes.
We can access all of the data. We can download it. We can manipulate it. We can change it. Now, this is your standard backdoor. If you did this with a traditional computer, it would be unimpressive. It's what 350,000 do a day. A couple of interesting things that allow this to work. First off, you're accessing a web browser using an out-of-date Android device. We conducted a survey recently where we set up 8 hotspots and roamed around New York. One of them was called Do Not Connect. Several people were like sitting in cafes and obviously saw that and went, challenge accepted. There was free public Wi-Fi, you name it. Interestingly, 70% of the Android users that connected, 71 actually, were running out-of-date versions of the software. They don't update their devices the same way that they would with a traditional computer. So by browsing to that, you hand over complete remote control to an attacker. Now, we're doing this over wireless here, but it works beautifully over 3G. And let me show you a few of the other capabilities here. We've got geolocation. Of course, this has GPS in it, so we can track where he is and put it on a map. We can access the webcam. Let's actually, if you hold it up facing the audience, let's try this. See if that works. And that's a terrible photo. Let's try that again. Oh, you are a really bad photographer. We can access the webcam, as you can kind of see here. And we can get a live stream if we want to as well of where this device is. Even better, it's got a microphone. I'm keeping that one.
That's a great photo.
Yes,
that's
that
a
is
fantastic
Is
photo.
that your better side?
Yes, it is.
So,
upside down, even better.
we can flip it and change it shortly. My point here is, a lot of people think these devices to be immune compared to the traditional PC. There have been over 2 million applications that provide attacker with these kinds of capabilities. And the very expectation of users is not there to do even the most simple practices to prevent this kind of attack. But when attackers succeed, we have a device that never leaves your side. We have a device that has a microphone, that has your location, that has access to both cameras, and you will have noticed nothing flashes or tells you anything is going on. It's completely silent. This is a whole new level of invasive compared to the traditional devices that we were protecting. And think now of the only time this device leaves your side, and the fact we are now making waterproof phones. Scary thought, isn't it? Round of applause for my willing victim.
Yes.
Thank you. You sure you don't want to just take this with you and it's All right. So let's play with a few other interesting things here. I know what's fun. Wi-Fi plugs. These are good. Lots and lots of them on the market now, connected to various different devices. This is an interesting one. Let me just fire this up whilst we talk about it. Okay. All right, so we have a nice little blinky light here. This thing is connected to a wireless plug, and I've just set my tool to connect to it and tell it to turn on and off. Big deal, who cares? Well, this device has no notion of a username and password. Why would you have a username and password to enable you to access functionality? It's so inconvenient in a world of interoperable liberal sharing of data. Why don't we revert to a security model where if you can see the device, you can control it? Well, it's obviously an astonishingly bad idea. In security, we gave up on this idea that we could control our networks a long time ago. And this device takes us back to a security model of 13, 14 years ago. Now, this is obviously pretty annoying. A couple of variations on the attack. As soon as I found out that you could do this, obviously, what you immediately do is write a tool that makes the lights flicker like on Supernatural when a ghost is coming. Right? That's the obvious thing to do with it. And I did that, and I had great fun, trolling several researchers in the lab. It was fun. But I went to do a demonstration of this. And I've just set this to turn on and off every couple of seconds. When I first did this, I may have accidentally got the intervals backwards and slightly made it turn on and off 200 times a second. And it turns out, if you turn a light on and off 200 times a second, a simple light, a lot of them explode. Quite a lot, actually. Quite explodey. And if you happen to be in a Vegas hotel room where someone is cleaning your room and a light explodes whilst you're doing this, there tends to be a lot of screaming and panicking, and they run for the fire alarm. And for those of you that have ever been to Vegas, you'll know that if you set off a fire alarm, it's a very expensive thing. I did manage to catch it just before and explain that I was just doing some security research. The light wasn't supposed to explode. I was very sorry. It was a challenging explanation, to say the least. But isn't this interesting that we have a device which falls below the expectations of a PC from 10 years ago in its fundamental design? And this is far from the only example. Now, this isn't the only case of that. Let's have a look at another example of this. This is good fun. Password guessing. This is a super retro attack. How many of you have a phone in front of you right now? A lot of you? If I asked you to guess the wrong passcode 15 times, what would happen? Any ideas? It would reset, it would wipe, it would lock. I mean, depending on the policy, it would exponentially time up. Same on a normal computer. You go log in, the time increases, which makes it hard to guess passwords. This has been a standard feature of computing for a very long time now. So, here is a password guessing tool that I haven't used since I was a kid because it hasn't been useful in computing. And what we're doing here is running it against a nice new CCTV camera that I acquired on Amazon. And you can see within a very short space of time, we're able to successfully retrieve the username and password. Password guessing attacks are back in town. Trivial to prevent, yet here this device allows us. In fact, of the 12 cameras that I acquired, 11 of them were vulnerable to this attack. 10 of them were vulnerable to a really big attack that was in the media. A lot of you might remember it, something called Heartbleed. Hit a lot of the headlines, there was a lot of panic. They were vulnerable only 3 or 4 weeks ago. Why are they still vulnerable? They're not getting updated. And the 2 that weren't vulnerable, one of them had successfully patched, hat tip. The other one didn't support any encryption. It's a feature I like to call security through incompetence. Failure to implement the even attempt at security saved them from being attacked. It's one business strategy, I suppose. So let's just prove this does actually work. Let me open this up here. Browse over here. Log in with that username and password. Oh, beautiful. Hello, audience. Oh, that's really confusing when you can see the photo of the, oh, that's horrible. By the way, this camera as well has an amazing infrared view. If you turn off all the lights, it can see everything, which is also wonderfully creepy. I think you just made it onto the live feed. All right, so a really basic attack shouldn't work in this day and age. It's from the Dark Ages, but surely, there aren't too many systems that would fall foul of this. Well, let me switch back to my deck here and show you a few examples of this with other devices. How many of you have bought your kids an Internet of Things connected toy? Yes? Cool. They're quite neat. I've been playing with those a lot recently. In fact, a good friend of mine, Larry Pesci, at a conference, we had 120 people in a room, and we set up dolls and teddy bears and all kinds of things, and wireless routers. None of them lasted more than 25 minutes. But my favorite one is this. We hacked it and made it sing Rick Astley. So whenever you try and talk to this doll, it just Rick Astleys you. It's like the ultimate Rick-rolling hack. It's just, I kind of want to send one to Rick Astley so that we can Rick-roll Rick Astley through the Internet of Things using a doll. It would be wonderful. Creepier things, of course, are possible. You can intercept the text, the stories. You can reprogram them to make them do all kinds of nasty stuff. But there are more serious examples. We went online, did a little digging for Internet of Things devices, CCTV cameras and alike. I found just over 540,000 of these devices connected to the internet using this tool. And then we started connecting to those that had no username and password. None at all. Here we have a school somewhere in the US. It's pretty creepy. This is one of my favorites. This is, I believe, a petrol station in Malaysia from some of the artifacts in it. And if you note down here, we have payment terminals. This camera is actually quite nice quality. I've degraded the feed. You can actually see the credit card number and the PIN as they enter it into the terminal. You can see there the code to unlock the till. There's also a lovely view of the chocolate, so you know the ideal time to rob the store. And if you switch back over here, this view, when you zoom it up, enables anyone who's watching this feed to steal a surprising amount of financial information. This is connected to the internet with no username and password for anyone to watch. Of course, the big question I was left asking is, what on earth is she eating? I mean, that looks horrible, doesn't it? So hit me up on Twitter if you know what that is so I can never eat it. Interesting, right? But coming to a close here, I've got a bit of fun. I want to show you my favorite CCTV camera feed of all time. This is a CCTV camera feed of a security guy watching the CCTV camera feed. And after about 50 minutes of watching him, if you watch him carefully, about 50 minutes in, here we go. Oh, watching the feed. Oh, watching it. And a yellow thing over there. Something went wrong. Kaplach doch nicht. Yeah, that's not me. Sorry, it's gone. Okay, well, in a minute, we might get a security guy. He falls asleep. It's so perfect. He falls asleep. He was asleep for about 17 minutes. I cut the clip short because clearly 17 minutes of someone sleeping isn't that interesting. But nonetheless, 540,000 of these connected to the internet running a security standard that is basically negligent by any traditional definition. Now, these are fun, but the truth is, these same flaws are ending up in far more serious devices. These flaws are ending up in nuclear power reactors. These flaws are ending up in medical devices, in cars. I did a penetration test of a power grid where there was one system that was responsible for monitoring the health of the power grid. And this one system has a volatile setup. In other words, if it loses power, it loses its configuration and stops working. So they connected a UPS to it to keep it working. Good fix. We found the UPS on the network. Username, UPS. Password? Oh, it's a good guess. I tried password first, and then I tried admin. It was UPS! Come on, people, we're not even trying! Anyway, so my point in moving to summary, so Dan and I can chat about this a bit more, is the following. I am a massive fan of the Internet of Things. Some of the innovation in the space is absolutely staggering. I've only scratched the surface of the flaws that we found in these devices. This router, if you open up the software update in Microsoft Word, you can see a username and password for an admin that you can't change in the user interface. The high-tech hacking tool of an Office product. It's actually astoundingly easy to fix a lot of these flaws. We've been through it before in the computing industry. We learnt these lessons 15-odd years ago. Building security in at the earlier stages allows us to have all of the great innovation, all of the cool stuff that we're talking about at this conference, without these horrifyingly easy hacks that an amateur could perform. Today, a fridge, does any hacker really care? But as we come up with newer and newer ideas, as we put more of our data there, as we put these devices around us in the physical world, we are about to hand over unprecedented power in the physical world to cybercriminals in the digital. And we're not trying hard enough to stop it. So with that, floor aside, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the presentation.